watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome to Public Square, a show where we explore the hot topics of the day, where we explore issues in depth and learn from the experts about how we can engage as citizens. I'm your host, Jerri Green, and today's topic, homelessness. In January 2020, there were almost 600,000 people experiencing homelessness in America. Within this number, 30% were families with children. Also of note, veterans represent 6%. People experiencing homelessness live in every state and territory, and they reflect the diversity of our country. And as the effects of the pandemic continue to ripple through our economy, these numbers are growing. The Memphis Union Mission reports they have sheltered over 8,000 people in the pandemic. And right here in Shelby County Schools, 538 students identify as homeless. That's a 36% jump from last fall. So what can be done to help those experiencing homelessness in our community? Today we're going to talk to a few local experts. First up, my friend, Paul Young. Mr. Young, who is currently President and CEO of the Downtown Memphis Commission, also holds 2 master's degrees from the University of Memphis, 1 in urban planning, and was previously the City of Memphis Division of Housing and Community Development Director. Mr. Young, thank you for joining us. I appreciate you being here today to talk to us about this really important topic.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here with you all.
I brought you on because I wanted to give our viewers sort of the 10,000-foot view of homelessness and what it looks like in the government sphere in particular to try to tackle this problem. So what did you see in your time with the city and in your time now in the Downtown Commission around homelessness?
Yeah, well, first, let me say that I'm personally impacted by homelessness. I have a very close relative that is experiencing homelessness right now. And so I understand it from various levels. And from a government perspective, what we want to try to do is connect people to the resources that they need so they can be housed. In my prior role at Housing and Community Development, we used federal dollars and some city dollars to fund a number of different programs and initiatives where you direct people to various resources, whether it's mental health needs, whether it's having a place to stay just for the night, so there's overnight shelters. But the goal should always be to put a person on a trajectory where they can be permanently housed. And that work is well and alive in Memphis. There's a lot of people, a lot of good-hearted people that are doing this hard work to move people along that trajectory.
You mentioned a lot of different solutions that have been offered there, from shelters to intermittent housing. You know, there's a lot of proposals of tiny houses or container homes. What do you think makes the most sense for the people who are experiencing homelessness in our community?
I think it's both and. When you think about homelessness, you have to remember that each person's situation is different. And so you can kind of put them in categories. You have those that are chronically homeless, and those are the individuals that tend to have some mental health or substance abuse issues. Overnight shelters are certainly helpful for those that end up in that chronically homeless bucket. But you also have families that are homeless, that are unstable for whatever reason. The parents have fallen on hard times and they have young people. With those families, we try to work with MIFA, and they have a host of programs to try to move that family. They'll put them in hotel rooms or other temporary housing solutions so they get them on the path to long-term housing. When you start thinking about tiny homes and other strategies, I think all of those are a part of the solution, but the goal should always be to get on a transition plan so that you're using these smaller units for short-term housing, but then a longer-term strategy to help the family be able to be self-sufficient.
And I guess part of that longer term strategy is affordable housing in general in Memphis.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that's something that in your prior role and your current role, you deal with a lot. And tell us a little bit about where affordable housing stands in our city.
Yeah, I tell people often that in Memphis we actually do have affordable housing, but the biggest challenge is that the quality of that housing is not up to par. So even though the rent may be cheap, you have a lot of conditions in those homes that are not necessarily suitable for families to be living in, whether it's mold or inefficient appliances, that's health and safety risks. And so our challenge in Memphis is trying to figure out how do we improve the quality of housing stock. And I often try to remind people that it's not something that we can necessarily build our way out of. We can build affordable housing, but we all must remember that the cost of commodities continue to increase, so construction costs aren't going down. So whether you charge $100 or $1,000, the cost to build the structure is exactly the same. And so the economics are a challenge. And so while we will continue to use our programs to build affordable housing, we also must be focused on the employment side, because affordability is relative. So if we can get people into better jobs or higher paying jobs or increase wages across the board, then we are truly addressing affordable housing by putting more income into their pockets.
Yes, and that's a whole separate show about income and what that should be. But one of the other things you touched on that's sort of a longer term or broader solution is the wraparound services that people need. What did you see, or what do you see as the sort of services that governments or other nonprofits can provide that can help support those experiencing homelessness?
Yeah, I'll just give a quick example. Many people know about Foot Homes Housing Development, public housing development that's downtown. That development was torn down in 2016. But one of the neat things that happened with that project is each family worked with a case manager. So they had case managers that were assigned from Urban Strategies to help that family with the relocation, to help them with whatever they need to be sufficient, whether that's transportation, childcare, education, jobs. And so these case managers were a lifeline to many of those families. And I think that is the model. How can we connect people to the resources they need in an efficient manner? We need to take that program to scale and take it to families that may not necessarily be in public housing, but still need to try to get a leg up. And so we got to figure out how do we work with more organizations that do that type of work, because those are the types of things that families need.
Yeah, and you mentioned MIFA earlier. I know in our prior conversations we've talked about places like Room at the Inn. What other organizations do you know of that are doing this kind of work in our community?
Yes, I mentioned MIFA. MIFA is one of our strong partners, the Community Alliance for the Homeless. The Hospitality Hub is an incredible partner to me when I was at HCD, and even with the work we're doing at Downtown Memphis Commission. Room in the Inn is partnered with College Chapel, and they've developed a respite care facility, so those individuals that are experiencing homelessness and they're not well enough to be they're well enough to be out of the hospital, but not well enough to be sleeping on the streets. They have a facility for them. And there's countless agencies. I don't want to leave anybody out, but there are other smaller churches that have been engaged, and it's one of those initiatives where everybody can play a role.
You keep mentioning the term experiencing homelessness instead of describing someone as homeless. Tell me why you make that word choice.
Well, it's something that I had to learn as I've been doing this work, is that we don't want to define a person by their current circumstance. And so when we call someone homeless, and I still slip up and do it, but when we call someone homeless, we are defining them by what should be a short-term circumstance. And so I like to define them as a person that's experiencing homelessness, so that it's clear that this is a short-term period of time, and ideally they will move out of homelessness to stability.
You know, there are other cities around our country, San Francisco comes to mind, Austin comes to mind, where there are essentially tent cities set up around City Hall. And it's become a problem that's so massive, the state legislatures are taking it on. What can we do here and now to avoid that happening in our city before it gets that bad? to make sure that we're taking care of it on a local level?
I think the best thing we can do is build out a pipeline and a system. And what I mean by that is ensuring that all of our support agencies are communicating and connected so that we can quickly get people to the resources they need. I think that we do want to build temporary housing spaces. And shelters are great, but we don't want to fill up shelters. We want people to move beyond shelters so that they're moving into permanent housing. And so I think that sometimes communities have a tendency to continue to build shelters, and then those shelters just continue to fill up. And so you just build up the population of people that are staying in these very short-term housing situations. And so the better approach to me is to continue to have shelters, but also build on the other side of that pipeline and ensuring that you have places for longer-term stays and then places where individuals can stay permanently.
What do you say to students, to professionals, just to citizens of how they can engage and make a difference around homelessness?
I think it's really important for people to support the agencies and the organizations. I know that oftentimes we see people standing on the streets, or someone may walk up and give us a sad story, and certainly give dollars if you feel compelled to. But I think the real way to support is to support those agencies who are moving people through the pipeline. Then your dollars can really be put to much bigger use than some of the short-term dollars that we may hand out as we walk down the street. The other thing is just understanding that every person has a story, and so continuing to be sympathetic and empathetic with the circumstances that people find themselves upon, because they have brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, children, just like all of us, but for whatever reason they found themselves in these circumstances, and just continuing to be compassionate as we go through this life.
I love that. In my house, we have two rules there: be kind to be safe, and kindness comes first. So I think showing some compassion to your fellow man is utmost of importance. Well, thank you for coming on today. We appreciate your insights and what you're doing in your work around homelessness, and we hope to talk to you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Stay tuned. We will be right back here with more on Public Square.
It's very fun to be in band, trust me. It's so much fun.
When I was an 8th grader and I saw them march, and I was like, wow, I need to be a part of this.
Our main performing group is the Varsity Band. That encompasses our marching band and our varsity concert band. We also have the jazz ensemble.
It's unique, so we're really lucky to have that.
I'm very methodical about teaching. I try to stay up to date because I want my students to have the best information that I can pass along to them.
He's excellent. He commands a sort of drive that we didn't exactly have.
I lead the class, but I also believe in the students self-assessing their work.
The leadership is led by the students. We lead most of the practices. It's basically just student-led.
And I think that's important for them to take that kind of ownership.
If you want to be a musician, you gain extremely important music skills, music techniques.
1, 2, 3.
There's so many opportunities for fellowship, and band is a family. And you develop that small community where you support each other, not only musically, but in many ways.
Really, without the band, the football games would be lame. Without the band, you wouldn't really have the pep rallies. The band is like a good foundation for the school spirit. If you want to join band, just do it.
I think band was the best part of my high school career.
For more information about the Kappa program, visit ghskappa.com or call 755-7775. You're watching the award-winning GHS-TV, a nationally recognized student television station.
Welcome back. I'm Jerri Green, host of Public Square. Today we are discussing homelessness here in our community. It's my distinct pleasure now to introduce Brittany Thornton. She is a change agent and a truth seeker. A first-generation Memphian who grew up in Orange Mound, disheartened by the poverty and crime associated with the area, Brittany sought to restore it to a thriving community. In December 2016, she founded Juice Orange Mound, a nonprofit with the mission to unite, empower, and support each resident. This Ivy League-educated former teacher turned law student is turning ideas into action for the betterment of Memphis. Thank you for joining us, Brittany.
Yes, thank you for having me.
First, I'd like you to tell us a little bit about what Juice is. Tell us what you do there.
Yeah, for sure. So Juice Orange Mound, we are a 501c3 here in Tennessee that serves the historic community of Orange Mound. It's the oldest Black community in the city of Memphis, established in 1890. So we have our hands in many different areas. The way we simplify it is we work on behalf of current residents. And so you think, people who might be living in a community could be high school students, they could be elders, they could be homeless people, they could be people who have different addictions, they could be people who are families, like there are many different interests in neighborhoods. And so we have a wide range of things that we focus on, and we just plan high quality events and programming for current residents.
And how did this come to be? How did you start this?
Yeah, so I am a native of Orange Mound. I moved back home in 2014 after graduate school and was just really disappointed with the condition of my neighborhood. And so I was 24 at the time, and I was like, I'm an adult. There's something surely that I can do and contribute. And so I attended community meetings for the first couple of years that I was home, and just really started to conceptualize what I thought I could do. And so Juice came to me, and I'm just very excited with the progress that we've made over the past couple of years, and look forward to seeing, what else we're able to do in the future.
And you mentioned in the variety of services and people that you serve, you do help some folks who are experiencing homelessness. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, sorry, there's someone who's knocking at my door. We do. We opened up a warming center at the top of the year. And so that was just, we had, inclement weather that was around February, mid-February. And we recently had acquired a building. And so, we had everything that we needed to be able to serve. And so we just stepped up and did what felt most natural for us as a nonprofit. So we didn't know how many people were in need. We just honestly did what we could do. And so it turns out that within the first couple of months of us opening up the shelter, that there were over 80 unique people who actually were in need of housing. And so the need was way more than what we ever anticipated. So we just continued to operate in that space.
Tell me about what sort of supplies and things you had to get to support these community members in such a short period of time.
Yeah, in the beginning, we literally were driving around and the snow was starting to come down. The inclement weather came, on I think it was the 15th. On the 14th, we were preparing for this. And so we had to get cots. We had to get, everything from pillows to pillowcases. We had to piece it all together. Our building was just an empty facility. And so on that first night, we had about 10 different cots that were just made up really nice. We called it a luxury warming center. And so, we had satin pillowcases and what we call premier snacks, we just were trying to be as thoughtful as possible. Later learned that satin pillowcases aren't the best. You're sliding off of your pillowcase. And so we learned a lot along the way. But we started, and then it's amazing to see how everything just grew from there. I think that energy was both matched and exceeded, and how the community, once it realized what we were doing, just stepped up to continue to contribute.
And so you said 80 members, unique members that have at some point been housed there. Tell me about your frequent flyers, your friends, your community that you've built there. I know I see some of them on your Facebook page regularly, sort of these characters that have come to life because you're sharing their stories and their humanity.
Yeah, for sure. The humanity piece is really important. So, as a nonprofit, we've been really intentional to kind of shift the narrative. There's such a negative narrative around Orange Mound. And so for us, we get the opportunity to get to know people, and so we just want people to know our people. And so our social media presence has just been intentional to like lift up their names and just talk about, the great people that they are. And so we have at this point committed to a cohort of individuals that we serve. So we very much are like an unconventional shelter. A lot of people might think that, every night there'll be new people, but we house, in essence, the same people over the past couple of months. We do have one person who's been with us since the beginning, of us opening up the warming center. And people, different tenures. Like people need maybe a month's stay to be able to get up on their feet or to go and find housing that is more ideal for them, because it is a communal space, which is an acquired taste, but some people, want just short stays, and some people are in it for the long haul. They're curious to see what the next level opportunity will be that Juice offers. So we've been intentional to be in the present and then also plan for the future. So we are preparing for phase 2, which is going to be a private room option that we'll be able to offer current, people that we're housing. And we hope to really cultivate a pipeline, like I think in terms of pipeline. So we want to be able to take people from the streets into home ownership. And so every step of the way, we want to be able to like really, catalog what does it take? What are some of the barriers? Like what are some of the opportunities? And like, what is this process? Is it possible? We want to venture into answering that question.
It is interesting that you talk about the barriers and the opportunities. I've watched through your social media, you have to juggle things around something as simple as getting new glasses or applying for benefits, like when we all had our refund checks and people didn't know their social security numbers or how to apply for it or have a residence for a bank account, things like that. Simple things that a lot of us take for advantage. Tell me about some of the barriers that are sort of unseen to the public, to people going from that pipeline, you say, from the streets to home ownership.
Oh, there are many. People aren't homeless for no reason. Like there's so many barriers that people have to being able to just live, life at a different level. And so some of those that you mentioned, we have people who have had identity theft that don't know how to resolve that. We have people who they were born out of state and accessing their documents is a challenge for them, especially because of COVID and how offices aren't really taking in-person people. Everything is online, which is another barrier to people's just, ability to access technology. We have individuals who, of course, because they don't have a residence to send mail to, they can't get mail, not having a phone. There are just so many barriers. And I don't think that people really understand, being homeless is a burden. And it's almost like being homeless is just, it's the simplest way to exist, because trying to work your way through your barriers is just exhausting. And it's exhausting for me as the support, even to like go through, you imagine being on the call for 45 minutes to resolve your issue and then your phone dies, and you were borrowing someone else's phone. The barriers are just endless, honestly.
And we talked with our prior guest, Mr. Young, a little bit about long-term solutions and the issue of affordable housing. What do you see around affordable housing in Orange Mound in particular?
We definitely need to recognize that this is a housing crisis and we need to address it. I don't think that we can address any issue until we name it as an issue. So I want us to have stakeholders be intentional to see it as an issue. And that's one of the reasons why we collect data, to be able to speak intelligently around, you might just think that it's a handful of people that are homeless in Orange Mound, but we know 3 months in, we could already house 30 people uniquely. That's told a different story. And so we need more accurate data. And we also need more resource providers. Like we need physical space to be able to create affordable housing. And we need people who can just do the case management and just casework to help people be able to know about resources and qualify for resources and maintain resources. And just make sure that people are good. People do need a lot of support.
Tell me your favorite story about working in this space with people experiencing homelessness.
Let me tell you, I have so many, like literally when you said that, so many came to mind. But one of my most favorite, I'm very intentional on creating like unique experiences. So we were talking, I've been noticing that a lot of my friends are roller skating again. And so I just told them, I was like, ooh, I'm gonna get some roller skates. And they're like, oh yeah, we can roller skate, we can roller skate. And so I was like, oh, you can roller skate. So I moved out of my house to be able to operate the shelter. So I live with them at the shelter. And that's because I'm the only staff person. So if we're going to do the work, then I have to like actually do the work. And so I'm like, oh, really? So I'm like looking up skates, and I ordered some skates for everyone who's interested. And I mean, when they put those skates on, I mean, the way they told me that they could skate, but in actuality, oh, they looked like newborn giraffes, like wobbling around and falling everywhere. It was the fun. I've never laughed so hard in my life. And so it was just such a good moment. And I know that memory will stay in my mind now and forevermore.
Well, I appreciate that you bring joy into their lives, as well as all of these really important technical pieces to help them get back on their feet and get on that pipeline to home ownership. But it is just as important that we remember they are people, and people need fun and wonderful experiences like that too. So thank you for being on today, and thank you for what you do every day in that space and in Orange Mound.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it.
People who experience homelessness lack stable housing for a variety of reasons. Some live on the streets, some move between temporary shelters, some for a short period of time, some for longer. They are men, women, and children of all races and religions. Some have served our country. Some have lost their jobs during this pandemic. They are old, they are young, they are our neighbors. It is time we think about long-term solutions like container villages or tiny homes or just affordable housing in general. It's also time that we work to meet the more immediate needs like addiction counseling, medical needs, and food resources. By working on the bigger issues from the macro level and putting pressure on our elected officials to put resources into solving these problems, and for us just to bring blankets and socks to our local shelters, there is something we can all do today to work to end this epidemic. To get more information on our show, please check us out on the web at GHS-TV.org, where we are streaming live 24 hours a day. You can also check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you for joining me, Jerri Green, today, and I hope you will turn into Public Square again next time as we continue to explore important topics and avenues for true civic engagement. Thank you.